Let's get to some domestic affairs here, because the news out of Ohio with this horrific train derailment just continues to get worse and worse. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. This from Stephen Donziger tweeted this out, but this is a Huffington Post article. He says, breaking: the EPA claim that water in Ohio is safe to drink is based on only a few tainted lab samples funded by the very rail company that caused the disaster. The EPA apparently never tested the water themselves. He asks, why does the polluter get to do the testing? I think that is something all of us would wonder. If you click through to the piece here, they give a lot of details about exactly how this testing went down and just why this is so troubling, because they've been telling residents it's all clear, it's all good, you could go back to your homes, you could drink the water, no problem, we've tested it, it's safe, trust us, etc. And then the news breaks that they're basing that on rail company paid consultants doing testing. And not only that, it's not only the fact that the source of the testing is questionable at best, but the actual samples that were taken, there's some indications that they were contaminated and not handled according to EPA standards. So let me go ahead and read a little bit of this article to you guys so you can get a sense of it. So they start with the news that the state used preliminary results from railroad-funded sampling to declare that the drinking water was safe in the wake of the toxic spill. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, who's a Republican, on Wednesday afternoon announced that new testing from 5 wells that supply the town's municipal drinking water showed no evidence of contamination. With these results, he says, Ohio EPA is confident that the municipal water is safe to drink. But on its webpage about the derailment, the Ohio EPA links only to railroad-funded preliminary test results. That's the basis that they used for this press statement from Mike DeWine that it's all good, the municipal water is safe to drink. The Columbiana County, which is the county that East Palestine is located in, their general health district, they separately sampled East Palestine's public water system last week. But at least as of when this article was written a few days ago, the county's testing results had not been made public. So the only results that have been made public are these railroad-funded water testing results. The lab report on the railroad-funded sampling indicates the samples were not handled in accordance with federal EPA standards. Sam Bickley, who's an aquatic ecologist at Virginia Scientist Community Interface and Advocacy-focused coalition of scientists and engineers, he's the one who alerted HuffPost to these sampling errors. He called the report extremely concerning. Quote, their results that claim there were no contaminants is not a reliable finding. I find this extremely concerning because these results would not be used in most scientific applications because the samples were not preserved properly. And this is the same data they're now relying on to say the drinking water is not contaminated. To be clear, the federal EPA has not done its own sampling of municipal water in East Palestine. During a press call with reporters Friday, an official in the Biden administration said all the sampling that's been done in Ohio has been joint, not Norfolk Southern alone. It's been with the Columbiana County Health Department collecting samples along with Norfolk Southern and sending those as split samples to do different labs for verification. So that is their defense here. And Emily, this comes as actually the EPA administrator, Michael Regan, is finally in Ohio today to visit with residents there, long overdue. But this follows a playbook of cover-up that we have seen so many times before. And it's something that, you know, a lot of social media users were actually warning about. When you see these sort of catastrophes, industrial accidents, et cetera, there is a common playbook that plays out where first the company is relied on for analysis of what's going on. The politicians echo whatever the company is saying, and then the media just echoes whatever the politicians are saying.
Right.
So the whole narrative comes from the person and the group that are most interested in downplaying the severity of what exactly is going on.
Right. The media will then repeat claims that have been sort of falsely baked together with just credulity. Like it's like,
right,
don't worry about it. We've looked into this. Now, here's another, I think, extremely disturbing quote from the HuffPost article, which is a great piece of journalism. James Lee, a spokesman for Ohio EPA, acknowledged the samples were not properly preserved or acidified, but said they were, quote, acceptable due to the next day processing at the laboratory. There is also a spokesperson from Norfolk Southern quoted in the article saying, though the initial data was valid, we wanted to ensure compliance with EPA standards and proactively asked the lab to rerun the samples with the remaining preserved vial from each sample. So again, these are the players who are sort of barely admitting that this is not an ideal set of samples. The Ohio government was not at all upfront about potential problems with these samples. Mike DeWine, I mean, it's incredible. People should know, if they're making the decision to drink this water, exactly who tested the results, who came to the conclusion that said it was okay to do that. I bet a whole lot of people would have made different decisions based on that information.
Well, and the question remains, okay, if the county did their own testing, where are those results?
We still do not have them.
Why aren't those being made public? So this is deeply troubling because these residents deserve, every level of scrutiny to the situation in order to protect their health, both in the near and the long term. And the government pretends like, oh, we really know what's going on here, and the media just parrots this line. We're taking a look over the weekend. The New York Times wrote this piece that made me so mad about basically trying to frame everybody who was concerned about this ongoing crisis as you have residents continuing to say nausea, skin rashes, headaches, dizziness, trying to frame everybody who's concerned about that as a quote-unquote right-wing conspiracy theorist.
Right.
And if you read through that article, there was a way to write an article about people who were going way too far, spinning conspiracies where there's no evidence, et cetera. But they didn't do that. Instead, they just smeared everyone who was concerned of this, and they completely regurgitated the government official line about what was going on with zero skepticism about issues exactly like this. Like, where is this journalism in the New York Times?
Right.
And if you're going to parrot the government line, I mean, you're supposed to be journalists holding power to account. You don't have any questions for government. Your message to the public is just like, no, accept exactly what they're saying. And if you don't, you're a right-wing conspiracy theorist. Absolute garbage. At the same time, there continue to be a lot of questions. So we just talked about the water. There's continue to be a lot of questions about the air quality. There are lawsuits that are being filed left and right here. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. The 6th lawsuit claims, quote, controlled chemical release worsened the East Palestine situation. The suit alleges that burning vinyl chloride creates phosgene gas, a chemical warfare agent used in World War I. By the way, this isn't like wild speculation. That is what is created when you burn vinyl chloride. So the question is, the government claims, oh, it's all dispersed, everything's fine now. Residents continue to have health impacts and very worried about the future. The details here are the complaint was filed on Wednesday in the U.S. District Court by an injury firm. They alleged the railroad dumped more than 1.1 million pounds of vinyl chloride into the environment during the incident. They claimed that amount of that emission of the toxic chemical was more than 2 times the total amount of vinyl chloride that is released by all U.S. industries over an entire year. And they alleged that burning vinyl chloride creates phosgene gas, a chemical warfare agent used in World War I that was banned by the Geneva Convention. Quote from the attorney here, I'm not sure Norfolk Southern could have come up with a worse plan to address this disaster. Residents exposed to vinyl chloride may already be undergoing DNA mutations that could linger for years or even decades before manifesting as terrible and deadly cancers. The lawsuit alleges that Norfolk Southern made it worse by essentially blasting the town with chemicals as they focused on restoring train service and protecting their shareholders. Authorities say they undertook what they called a, quote, controlled release of unstable chemicals to prevent a possible explosion at the derailment scene. And of course, vinyl chloride is a known carcinogen. And as was previously stated, this type of gas was banned by the Geneva Convention because of its toxic nature.
Well, and this is something that gets to the water as well. And a lot of people probably remember this with 9/11 first responders and people that were around the crisis scene around Ground Zero and on 9/11 and the weeks and months afterwards, is that we don't know. We really don't know the scope of the tragedy until years later. We don't know the scope of the effects of some of these cancer-causing chemicals, of some of the chemicals in general, whether they're in the air or the water.
Yes.
And so for the confidence to be projected by Mike DeWine, the Ohio EPA, Norfolk Southern, which of course their interest in this is obvious, you understand why they would be doing that, but for that confluence between the government and the private company here to be projecting that level of confidence instead of meeting people where they are, which is terrified that they're going to have effects from this down the road, years from now, that can't even be calculated right now or understood right now. I think it's just on a political level, purely political level, big swing and a miss, an obvious mistake. But even on a moral level, I mean, we have no idea, truly, no idea what's going to happen.
Yes. That's exactly right. And I can't imagine being a resident of this town, wondering if you can go back to your home, wondering if it's safe to drink the water and breathe the air.
Your pets.
Yeah, exactly. We played for you guys last week. Jordan Cheriton, they've been on the ground with Status Quo, our partners, and he interviewed a fox keeper who one of his foxes had already died and all the others were sickened. Another one has now passed away. So people, and these, you guys know how people feel about their pets. I'm sure you feel the same way about your pets. I mean, these are important parts of your family. And to watch them be killed by this incident and just to hand wave away, oh, it's safe now and don't worry about it. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute betrayal. And, there's a couple other things to say about this. One is we now, with this horrific accident, have kind of tracked where the corruption started, back in the Obama administration, at least with regards to this specific tale. Okay, the Obama administration wanted to institute more safety regulations. That was great. But then industry comes in to sort of curtail and undermine what the NTSB had said, what the restrictions should ultimately be. So there's a curtailing of the initial ambition under the Obama administration to be more industry friendly. Under the Trump administration, you see that go even further. They roll back some of the regs that were put in place in the Obama administration. Under the Biden administration, you actually see rail workers really rising up, calling attention to major potential safety issues, not only in terms of their own lives, but in terms of the potential impacts on these communities. And you see a bipartisan effort, but led by Democrats, to crush this movement and silence their warnings and side ultimately with the railroad executives and the shareholders. And you also see they don't do anything to put back in place the regulations that had been curtailed by Obama and rolled back by Trump. So you can see this tale of how industry shaped the landscape to make it friendly for them. But what you realize in looking at this is, God, how many other instances throughout our country, where this is going on, whether it's big oil or big chemicals or big pharma or big ag or whatever. I mean, this is happening every single day with our government and the people who are supposed to be keeping us safe, who are more interested about, a campaign contribution or more interested in what their next job is going to be after they leave the EPA or whatever their agency they're at, instead of making sure that people are kept safe today. And I think for, broader picture, zooming out from Ohio, that's what is so incredibly, incredibly troubling about this story, is because you realize that this is really just scratching the surface of the way that the whole system has been rigged to generate profits for a few over the health and safety of communities across the country.
And by the way, final thought on this, that's why the media is, I think, the single biggest problem in American politics, because business, industry, government can't get away with that level of collusion when you have a healthy fourth estate. That's why it's called the fourth estate. And so when people kind of roll their eyes about media bashing, actually, without a strong media, you don't get this level of corruption and collusion, because the media creates an incentive for the industry and the government partner with the industry not to behave badly. So to your point about where we might not know this is happening, well, we didn't know this was happening for years because the corporate press wasn't covering it. I mean, seriously, we have no idea how many other places like you were saying, whether it's big ag, big pharma, where should media be looking right now to create disincentives for people to behave badly and to give the public information they need to vote wisely, to shop wisely, all of these different things. When you don't have that, you don't have a functioning system.
Yeah, and instead you have the New York Times literally running cover for the government and saying that anyone who questions them is a whack job. It is outrageous. We want to stay with this story. We've got Rich McHugh. He's a fantastic investigative reporter. He's with News Nation now. He is on the ground in East Palestine. Let's get to it. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.